In vandag se les gaan ons kyk na die verhalende opstel. In today's lesson, we are going to look at the narrative essay. Die verhalende opstel begin met 'n storieformule. In order to start our narrative essay, we need to write a story formula. Wat is 'n storieformule en hoe werk dit? What is a story formula and how does it work? Did you know that every movie, story, drama, and even computer games that you play follow a story formula? Elke verhaal, fliek, drama en rekenaarspeletjie volg 'n storieformule. Die storieformule is die geraamte van jou verhaal. The story formula acts as the skeleton to your narrative. Wanneer ons 'n storieformule het, kan ons begin bou aan die res van ons verhaal. Once we have a story formula, we can start building on the rest of our narrative essay. So waaruit bestaan 'n storieformule? Let's look at the things that a story formula contains. Die heel eerste ding waarmee ek gaan begin is 'n karakter wat iets wil hê. So the first thing that my story formula needs is a character who wants something. So it can be a goal that they want to achieve, it can be a treasure that they want to find, it can be a competition that they would like to win. Next, my story formula needs a character that for some reason cannot get to his goal or cannot reach the treasure or cannot win the competition. So die karakter kan nie kry wat hy wil hê nie. So we need to write why the character can't get what he wants. Hoekom kan die karakter nie kry wat hy wil hê nie? Dan die derde ding wat my storieformule kort is 'n plan van aksie wat geneem word om hierdie doelwit te bereik. The third thing that my story formula needs is a plan of action. How will my character reach their goal? So there's a problem, and now we need a plan of action to solve this problem so that the character can reach their goal. En laaste in my storieformule, uiteindelik kry die karakter wat hy wou hê of hy leer 'n les daaruit. So finally, at the end of my story formula, I need to write down that the character either reaches his goal or he learns a lesson from this experience. Kom ons kyk na 'n voorbeeld van 'n storieformule. Okay, so let's look at an example of a story formula. Now remember, a story formula is just a skeleton to your actual story. So story formula consists of short little sentences about these four main points. All right, so I've chosen a character. And what does my character want? Shane wil baie graag die skool se kunskompetisie wen. Shane would really like to win the school's art competition. Okay, so now in my story formula, I have my character and I know what he wants. All right. And then, why can my character not reach this goal? Hy weet nie wat om te verf nie. En daar is twee ander talentvolle leerders wat deelneem aan die kompetisie. Shane doesn't know what to paint. And to top it off, there are two other very talented students who are also competing in this competition. So that's how my character cannot reach the goal of winning the competition. Now I need that plan of action. How is he going to win this competition? Shane gaan soek inspirasie by een van die kunsmuseums en ontmoet 'n ou kunstenaar. So his plan of action is to go and find inspiration. And he goes to one of the art museums and here he meets a very old artist. So that's my plan of action. And as you can see, these are all short sentences. And then I will use this story formula and expand on these sentences and write full paragraphs to form my story. All right, so the last step is that he needs to either win this competition or he needs to learn a lesson from his experience. So here I've written, hy besluit om die ou kunstenaar se werk te verf en hy wen die kompetisie. So he decides to paint one of the artist's paintings with a few additions and changes, and he wins the competition. All right, so now I've got my story formula, I've got my skeleton, ek het my geraamte, ek weet wat my karakter wil hê, ek weet hoekom hy dit nie kan kry nie, ek weet wat ek wil hê hy moet doen om die doelwit te bereik, en ek weet hy gaan die kompetisie wen. So I've got my skeleton, I know who my character is and what he wants. I know why he can't get it. I know what I want him to do in order to get to his goal. And at the end of the day, I want him to win the competition. So I've written my skeleton. Now we can start doing our planning. Okay, so planning is a very important step in the writing process. When you plan something, you know exactly where your story wants to go, you know where you need to make changes. Okay. So jy kan hierdie beplanning gebruik vir jou verhalende opstel. You can use this type of mind map to do your planning for your narrative essay. All right, so the very first thing that we are going to do is we are going to give our story a title. Okay, and that's very important. And try and make your title a bit interesting and creative, but still it needs to match the content of your story. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to write down the title of our story. And then we're going to fill in small little details here. Okay, what is your story about? Waaroor gaan jou story by nommer 1? Now here you've already written your story formula. So you can just pop your story formula in here. It will be a short little paragraph about the sentences that you wrote in your story formula. Wie is die hoofkarakter? Now you've already written who the main character is in your story formula, so you can just pop your character's name over here. Wat gebeur? Waar gebeur die story? Okay, so at number 3, where does the story take place? Now we don't always have to give full detail and descriptions about where the story takes place, just a general description. Like you'll see my story will take place obviously at school where the teacher introduces the competition and in the museum where he meets this artist. But I'm not going to go into detail about where the museum is or what the name of his school is. I'm just going to give a broad outline of where the story is happening. All right, and then at number 4, wanneer gebeur die story? So when is this taking place? Okay, and this is very important. Is it taking place in the present, in the past, in the future? Because if you decide that it takes place in the present, you need to stick to present tense. It gets very confusing when we skip tenses, unless there's like a little bit of a time lapse where the competition was given to him on Monday and on Friday announced the winners. That's fine, but it all takes place in the present tense. Okay, so just briefly, when does this story happen? And now the important part comes. Now these green blocks each represent a paragraph. And so there's this star and this circle. Okay, so our first paragraph is going to be represented by number 5. So in number 5 on your mind map, you're going to write down short details of what you want paragraph 5 to contain. Now, number 5 is the storyline of the inleiding. So this is your introduction, your storyline. So here, what I can basically do is write the first 2 parts of my story formula. So I can introduce my character, I can say what he wants, and then in number 6, my second paragraph, I'm going to say why he can't get the goal. Okay, so number 5, I'm going to set the scene, I'm going to tell the story, I'm going to say that the teacher introduced the competition. And in number 6, I'm going to say there's one problem. There are 2 other talented students that have entered this competition, and now Shane doesn't know what to paint. Okay, so by nummer 6, jou tweede paragraafie, gaan jy die probleem skryf. Okay, so at number 5, we're going to introduce our character. Ons gaan ons karakter bekendstel, ons gaan die storyline gee. By nummer 6 gaan ons die probleem beskryf. We're going to describe the problem. Okay. Then, if you look at number 7, there's 3 blocks for number 7. Okay, this is the action that the character takes in order to get to his goal. Hier is die gebeure wat gaan plaasvind sodat die karakter by sy doelwit kan uitkom. Nou, hier het ek 3 nommer 7's en die rede daarvoor is dat ek nie alles in 1 paragraaf kan skryf nie. Meer as 1 ding gaan gebeur. So ek moet daardie gebeure opdeel in 2 tot 3 paragrawe. Okay, remember, the character is going to do a few things, and we can't write all of those things in 1 paragraph. Then the paragraph becomes long and boring for the reader. So we split his actions or the events that happen in order for him to reach his goal. We split them in 2 to 3 paragraphs. Okay, so remember that you can split your actions and you can write them here in 2 to 3 paragraphs. Then your character will reach a climax, or your story will reach a climax. Okay, die hoogtepunt. In other words, what happens? He has now solved his problem. What does he do? He decides to paint this old artist's painting, and he makes some adjustments to the painting. So that will be my hoogtepunt. Okay, that is where he solves the problem, and you're going to explain how he solves the problem. Then number 9 and 10, by nummer 9 en nummer 10, gaan ons story afsluit. This is where my story starts coming to an end. And I can choose to split it into 2 paragraphs, or I can simply just write 1 paragraph. Okay, so die afplatting of ontlonting. So after he has solved his problem, what happens? Just a brief description of what happens. Now, obviously in mine, he hands in his painting. And then lastly, he wins the competition. All right. So just small little paragraphs to end off your story. All right. So now that our planning is complete, we can move on to the next step. Okay. Now, I want to speak to you about when to start a new paragraph. Wanneer begin ons met 'n nuwe paragraaf? Okay. So we can start new paragraphs when there is a new time that takes place. So a little bit of time has passed. So like I said, on Monday, the teacher introduced the competition. On Friday, he won the competition. Now, obviously, we can't put all of that in one paragraph. So if there's a time lapse, we start a new paragraph. As die tyd verloop het, dan begin ons 'n nuwe paragraaf. Right. And then ons begin nuwe paragrawe vir nuwe idees of gedagtes. If there is a new action or a new event or a new idea, you need to start a new paragraph. For example, you've written that there are 2 people who have entered their names for the competition, and you want him to go to the art museum to find inspiration. You can't put all of that in the same paragraph because it's 2 very separate ideas. The 2 kids that have entered their name in the competition have nothing to do with Shane going to the museum. All right. So when you start a new idea or new action, you start a new paragraph. Then very important, wanneer daar 'n nuwe spreker aan die woord is en jy gebruik direkte aanhalings hiervoor. So let's say there's a character that's speaking. If that character speaks, you need to put his words in a separate paragraph, even if the paragraph is only 1 line long. And then the next person will answer that character, and the words of that person will also be in a new paragraph. So every time that a character is speaking, we put their words in a new paragraph. All right, so that's very important. And remember to use your quotation marks when the character is speaking. All right, and then if the environment changes, we start a new paragraph. So as die plek of die omgewing van die karakter verander. So like I said, in the beginning, he was at school and the teacher introduced the art competition. Then he goes to the museum. Now, I can't put all of that in the same paragraph because he's changed environments and different things are happening at different places. So every time the character changes place, okay, or environment, we start a new paragraph. All right, so that is how we know when to start a new paragraph. All right, and then very important, chronologische volgorde. Chronological order is very, very important in a story. Okay, 'n logiese, ontwikkelde storyline is meer oortuigend. If your story follows a chronological, logical pattern, it's much more entertaining for the reader and they can follow the story more easily. If you mix up your storyline and things don't follow a logical pattern, it gets a bit confusing for the reader. Okay, so look, for example, at my storyline, my logical order. Okay, so the first thing that will happen, die juffrou stel die kompetisie bekend en Shane gee dadelik sy naam in. Okay, so the teacher needs to introduce the competition and then Shane enters his name. We can't have him going to the museum first because why would he be going to the museum? He has to hear about the competition first and then give his name. Okay, so ons kan nie laat die juffrou later die kunskompetisie bekendstel nie. Ons moet begin met die kunskompetisie. Okay, and then the next step in my story is that the 2 friends also hand in their names. All right, and then Shane doesn't know what to paint. Now, he can't go to the museum first and then the classmates hand in their names because then he doesn't have a problem. Okay, so do you see that the logical order is what gives the story that meaning? It makes sense. It all follows a pattern. Okay, and then he goes to the museum. Hy gaan museum toe vir inspirasie en hy verf die kunststuk. He needs to go to the museum for inspiration first and then he paints his artwork. He can't paint his artwork and then decide to go to the museum because the museum is where he finds his inspiration. Okay. And then lastly, he wins the competition. I can't say that he won the competition before he's even painted. Okay. So that is why a chronological order is very important. Okay. Now we are going to use our story formula and our planning, our mind map that we filled in, and we are going to write our first draft. Okay, gebruik jou beplanning om jou eerste poging te skryf. Okay, so I've got an example of a first draft here, and I'm going to read it with you, and I'm going to explain to you what I did in each paragraph. Okay, so die eerste ding wat ons wil doen is, ons gee vir ons opstel 'n titel. We're going to give a title to our story. Okay, and I've written a seun met vlerke, a boy with wings, and you'll see how my title fits in with my story. Now, I was able to get this title because I filled in my planning and I knew what my story was going to be about. Okay, so we start off with the title. Okay, verlede week het Juffrou Venter die jaarlikse kunskompetisie aan die kinders bekendgestel. Shane was baie opgewonde. Hy het sy naam dadelik op die inskrywingsvorm gaan skryf. Terselfdertyd het Timothy en Sarah ook hulle name neergeskryf. Shane se hart het in sy skoene gesak toe hy hulle name sien. Beide Timothy en Sarah kom uit gesinne waar een van hulle ouers kunstig is. Hulle is talentvol. Shane is lief vir kuns en goed met verf, maar hy twyfel of sy kunststuk 'n kans gaan staan teen Timothy en Sarah se. So now I've written my first paragraph. And in my first paragraph, as you can see, I've used my story formula and a character description. Okay, so in my first paragraph, I have said that the teacher, Juffrou Venter, introduced the art competition. So she introduced the yearly art competition to the kids. And now I'm giving Shane a bit of character. I said that he was very excited. Can you see? I've given him a bit of description. So that's very important in an essay. Hy het sy naam dadelik op die inskrywingsvorm gaan skryf. So he enters his name. So already I've set my storyline. The teacher gave the competition to the kids and he entered his name. And then I start with my problem. Okay. Now, I could actually have used a different paragraph here. I could have split this into 2 paragraphs, but I thought it would be better for the purpose of this lesson to keep it all together. So what is the problem? Timothy and Sarah, who are very talented and come from families where there are artists in the family, have also entered their name. And then I see a little bit of character description for Shane. He loves art and he's really good at it, but he doubts himself. Okay, he doubts that his art piece will stand a chance against Timothy and Sarah. Okay, so in paragraph 1, use your story formula, introduce your storyline, and give your character a little bit of a description. Okay, let's look at paragraph 2. Die kompetisie sluit hierdie Vrydag en Shane het nog steeds niks om in te handig nie. Hy is so senuweeagtig oor die ander 2 deelnemers se kunststukke dat hy glad nie weet wat om te verf nie. Okay, so now I've set that problem in motion and I said the competition ends on Friday. So can you see I've had a time change? I'm talking about a different idea. And he still hasn't handled anything. And he's very nervous because of the other 2 that have entered the competition. And he doesn't know what to paint and time is running out. Okay, so in paragraph 2, I've given a bit of description to my problem. Remember, you wrote the problem in your story formula, but now we have to add a bit of detail. Okay, let's read the 3rd paragraph. Hy het oral inspirasie gesoek, maar niks praat met sy hart nie. Vandag gaan hy kunsmuseum toe en die hoop dat hy dalk daar iets sal sien wat hom sal help. So in paragraph 3, something else has happened. A new idea has come into play. He tried to look for inspiration everywhere. And today, can you see there's a time change? That's why it's a new paragraph. Today he's going to the art museum in the hope that he will see something. So this paragraph is the first action that my character takes in order to solve his problem. Onthou julle ons het gepraat van daardie gebeure vir die karakter om die probleem op te los. Hierdie is nou een van die gebeure. Een van die gebeure is dat hy vandag kunstmuseum toe gaan. Okay. Kom ons kyk na die res van die opstelletjie. In die 4de paragraaf sê ek, Shane stap dadelik na sy gunsteling kunststuk in die museum. In die kunststuk is daar 'n waterval. 'n Seun staan bokant en leun vooroor, maar sy gesig is onseker. Dit is asof hy nie kan besluit of hy wil spring of nie. Shane let op dat daar 'n ou man is wat ook na die kunststuk staar. Alright, so another action has taken place. When he gets to the art museum, he goes to his favorite painting. And then I give a bit of a description about his favorite painting. And while he's standing there watching this painting, he notices that an old man is also staring at this painting. So that's another action that's taken place. Nog een van die gebeure wat plaasvind sodat hy sy probleem kan oplos. And then, very carefully, look at this. The next paragraph is only one line long. That's because the old man is speaking. So when he's speaking, I write his words, I write a little bit of a description, and that is his paragraph. Dink jy hy het gespring, vra die ou man, en beduie na die seun in die kunststuk. So the old man asks him, do you think this boy that's standing above the waterfall, leaning over, jumped? Okay, so the artwork has a boy standing above a waterfall, and he's looking over the waterfall, but his face shows that he doesn't know whether he should jump or not. So the old man then asks Shane, do you think that this boy jumped? Then it's Shane's turn to speak, and that's why I use a separate paragraph for Shane. Shane kyk verstom na die ou man. So he looks at the old man. Ek dink die kunstenaar wou hê ons moes wonder wat die seun se besluit was, sê hy. So he says, I think the artist intended for us to keep wondering whether he made the jump or not. Okay, so now Shane actually shows this old man that he understands the painting. All right, and the old man is going to reply, and that's why I need to use a new paragraph. Die ou man lag. Dis die eerste keer in al die jare wat my kunswerk hier hang, wat iemand dit verstaan, sê die ou man en stap weg. So the old man laughs and he says, you know what? It's the first time in all the years that my artwork has hung here that somebody's actually understood it. So this old man is actually the artist of the painting, and voila! Shane has got his inspiration. Okay, so now I start another action. Okay, and I start a new paragraph. And this is the hoogtepunt, the climax, because now he's come to that idea that he wants to do for his painting. He's realized that he's found his inspiration. Okay, so now he's going to solve the problem. Shane kan sy ore nie glo nie. So this is the climax. That's the star in your planning, right? Shane kan sy ore nie glo nie. Hy het sopas die kunstenaar van sy gunsteling kunststuk ontmoet. He's met the artist of his favorite artwork, and he found his inspiration. Hy het sy inspirasie gevind. Hy loop vinnig huis toe om aan die werk te spring met sy verfstuk. Suddenly he knows what he wants to paint, and he goes home and he starts painting. Okay, so now he solved his problem. And then I'm going to end off my essay. Die afplatting en die einde is wat die karakter kry wat hy wil hê. So I've chosen to make my character reach his goal. And the character doesn't always have to reach their goal, but it just makes it a bit more difficult to end off the story if the characters don't reach their goal. Okay, so in the end of my story, I say, Juffrou Venter kondig die wenners die maandag aan. Shane se verfstuk het gewen. Die prentjie van 'n waterval en 'n seun wat spring, maar dan sy vlerke sprei, hang voor in die klas. Hy glimlag van oor tot oor. So the teacher announces the winners on Monday. So there's been a time change, and that's why I needed a new paragraph. And what happened? Shane's artwork won. And then he says the picture that he painted of the waterfall and the boy jumping and spreading his wings is hanging in front of the class. And obviously Shane is smiling from ear to ear. So can you see how my title matches my story? Shane's painting was the artist's painting, but he changed it and he made the boy jump. But as the boy jumped, he opened his wings. So that is why my story's title is A Seun met Vlerke, but also it refers to Shane. Shane spread his wings. As soon as he found his inspiration, he spread his wings and he started painting. All right, and he won the competition. So that is my first draft. Now, very important step in the writing process. 'n baie belangrike stap in die skryfproses is redigeer jou eerste poging. We have to proofread and edit our first draft before we write our final draft. Okay, so how do we edit? Hoe redigeer ons? Gebruik jou woordeboek en maak spelling en leestekens reg. So we want to use a dictionary, make sure we've spelled all our words correctly and we've used punctuation mark correctly. Voeg beskrywende woorde by. So we have to give a bit of descriptions to our characters. Now we don't have to say he has blue eyes, brown hair, fair skin, all of that. We just need to add description like, for example, his heart really was broken when he found out that the two most talented kids in his class also entered the competition. Or we give a description of the artwork. So we have to really describe some of the things in our storyline. Maak gebruik van intensiewe vorms, idiome, trappe van vergelykings en versamelname in jou skryfstuk. So how do we describe? We use intensive forms, idiomatic expressions, degrees of comparison, and collective nouns in our writing piece. And this all contributes to the description of our story and our characters. Maak seker jou paragrafering is correct. Very, very important. Make sure that your paragraphs have been used correctly. So remember when we spoke about the first paragraph, I said I could possibly have split that into two. So in my final draft, I might split paragraph 1 into 2 paragraphs. All right. So make sure you read your paragraphs again. You may write longer paragraphs and some paragraphs might be shorter, and that's okay. That's something that the teacher will be looking for. Maak seker jy het niks herhaal nie. Very important. Do not repeat words, phrases, or ideas. Okay. If you have mentioned 300 times that Shane went to the museum, you need to take that out. You can only say it once. The action only happens once. All right. And that is how we edit our first draft. I hope that you have fun writing your narrative essay. Ek kan nie wag om julle verhalende opstelle te lees nie.